During the pandemic, many workers at meat processing plants got the virus, and so plants had to shut down, animals had to be killed, and as a result, restaurants in many regions ran out of meat and burgers in particular. For many consumers, this was the right opportunity to try the plant-based alternatives to meat, and that are becoming more available at the grocery stores. Brands like Impossible Food and Beyond Meat are normally served at restaurants or bought by vegans and vegetarians. But now consumers are more aware about the relationship between diets and health, and about animal welfare, and also about environmental damage from livestock farming. This bodes well for Pat Brown, the founder of Impossible Food. He is on a mission to replace meat by 2035. Take a listen.
I founded Impossible Foods. Our mission is to completely replace the use of animals as food technology by 2035. We're dead serious about it. We totally believe it's doable. And we've been working on that ever since. And we treated it from the get-go as the most important scientific problem in the world, is understanding in molecular terms what makes meat delicious, and then figuring out how to get precisely the right ingredients from sustainable plant sources to enable us to outperform those products in delivering the delicious experience that people care about. And we've made tremendous progress since then. We have we launched our first product about 4 years ago. It's been super successful. We're growing very fast as a business. We have a bunch of new products in the R&D pipeline. I was confident that we would succeed when I launched this company, and now I'm completely confident. There's it's game over for the incumbent industry. They just don't realize it yet.
Pat Brown was a biomedical researcher and professor in Stanford University, with several accomplishments in both occupations. In fact, he has been elected to the United States National Academy of Sciences. And he is considered one of the top 2,000 scientists in the nation. The idea of Impossible Food came about during a sabbatical he took to decide what to do next with his career. Here are the details.
First of all, it was going to be something about dealing with the big environmental crises that we're facing right now. There are two kind of, each of them arguably the biggest environmental threats that humanity has ever faced. One is the rapidly progressing climate change, and the second is a catastrophic collapse in global biodiversity. And as I started educating myself about what potential tools I could use to solve those problems, I realized that by far the biggest factor in both of them is the use of animals as a food technology globally. Nothing comes close to that technology. It's by far the most destructive technology in human history. Challenge me on that if you want. And so the other thing that was critical to recognize is that we're not going to, so we got to get rid of that technology. It's much more important than replacing fossil fuels in terms of the benefits for the world, and challenge me on that, I'll be happy to explain why. But the other thing is that recognizing that people who are supporting the industry, the consumers of meat, fish, and dairy foods, are not going to be talked out of liking those foods. In fact, you could talk to most of the world's environmentalists who understand this problem completely. They know how destructive this industry is, and yet they're all eating steak for dinner. So it's just too hard to get people to change such basic habits as their food preferences. So that's not the solution. And government regulation isn't going to be the solution, because you can't even get the governments of the world to agree to these feeble commitments they made at Paris to sign on to progressive climate change. They're certainly not going to intervene with food preferences. Okay, that means the solution has to be completely different, and it is to recognize that the problem isn't that people love meat, it's that we're using the wrong technology to produce it, that we use animals as a technology for transforming plants into meat, fish, and dairy foods. They're terrible at it, okay? They didn't evolve to be meat machines. They're incredibly inefficient, and that's fundamentally why it's so environmentally destructive. But when you frame it that way, actually, okay, that's a very tractable problem. It's in the class of problems that I've worked, I was a biomedical researcher. Fundamentally, you're talking about foods whose desirability to consumers is an emergent property of their kind of molecular makeup. And I believe that if we could just deeply understand what are the molecular mechanisms that underlie those things that consumers value, that it should be possible not only to make foods that deliver everything that those products can deliver, but actually do much better. Because again, the cow did not evolve to be a meat machine. It's not good at it. It's fundamentally unimprovable. And once we take control of all the knobs, we can make something that's better than the cow can ever do. And that was my thesis anyway. So at that point I realized, okay, the solution here is to make the most delicious meat, fish, and dairy foods in the world, make them vastly more sustainably from plants, compete in the marketplace, forget about regulation, just let consumers call the winner, and I believe that it would succeed. So.
Today Impossible Food only has natural alternatives for ground beef, but other products will come to the market soon, including steak.
A few years ago when we decided that our first product would be raw ground beef, and let me just make a point that I think wasn't clear from what you said. More than half of all the beef sold in the U.S. is sold as ground beef. And if that market goes away, it's an economic disaster for the beef industry. So, and again, the goal here is to create an economic disaster for that industry. But yeah, steak is really important. We have a very active project right now working on steak. It's going very well. I have complete confidence that we're going to have an awesome product. But that's just me saying it. So stay tuned, and consumers will get to decide whether it's awesome enough for them. Okay, so the first order of business is, so people know they love meat. Okay. So and our goal is to compete against the incumbent. And I'll just say incidentally that about 3/4 of our sales, we know from receipt data and so forth, directly displace the animal-based product, which is our goal. If it just was an additional thing in their basket, it's a complete waste of time for us. So that's good. But we felt like what we needed to do was intercept the consumer who was going to buy the animal-based product. That's kind of the goal here. And the most kind of straightforward way to do that is to make a product that delivers exactly what consumers want from that product. But you're right about one thing, which is that we can make a product that is substantially better in ways that merit the consumers than the cow-derived product. Well, right out of the box, our product had no cholesterol. It doesn't get inoculated with fecal bacteria in the slaughterhouse, as every single pound of ground beef in the U.S. does. We can make it lower calorie, lower fat, and those things because we control the knobs. But the flavor, that's another thing. Think of it this way. In order to get something made from plants to be, for a large majority of people who try it, indistinguishable, or they will identify it immediately as meat from an animal, we had to navigate this space of possibilities in terms of flavor and aroma and so forth to get from point A to that point where it's recognized as cow muscle, basically. Well, in the course of navigating that space, we've learned a lot about places we can go that are not exactly right there. And there's essentially zero doubt. And in fact, we've done some experiments that kind of prove this, that we can make something that actually is generally preferred by consumers to the cow version. And I think that by next year, I think our mainstream product will actually, if we do a side-by-side comparison with nothing but meat eaters, will be preferred by a majority of them. And that, like I say, that's already true for a pretty large fraction. So it's not enough for us to be just as good. We have to be more delicious, better nutritionally, and more affordable to guarantee our success, and we will.